Chapter 18: The Missed Delivery. In the autumn, when the garrison families did labor upon their inland fields and the tower kept its watch over the eastern marches, there came a day when an overdue shipment of sulfur arrived by unexpected hands. For a full month the wizard had awaited the delivery, the roads proven unreliable and the merchant uncommonly delayed. Fenris was away in the eastern marshes when it finally came, his measurements not yet complete, and the tower's affairs fell to his apprentice. She had accepted deliveries before. She had managed tradesmen and Lord Tail's men and the ordinary business of the tower in her master's absence. What came that day was not ordinary. The overdue shipment. Lyra stood in the tower's supply room, staring at the near-empty barrel of sulfur and trying to calculate how long they could make it last. Not long, perhaps 2 weeks if Fenris was careful with his measurements. 3 if he skipped some of the less critical observations. The shipment from Master Ferron had been due a month ago. When it hadn't arrived on schedule, Fenris had sent word to the settlement asking after the delay. The response had been cryptic. The sulfur had been purchased and dispatched, but the merchant carrying it had taken a different route and would arrive when circumstances permitted. Whatever that meant. Lyra had marked it in the household accounts with increasing irritation. Sulfur wasn't just convenient for Fenris's work, it was necessary. Without it, certain measurements couldn't be taken, certain processes couldn't be completed. The work of monitoring the boundary depended on materials that couldn't be substituted or improvised. She was considering sending another, more strongly worded message to Master Ferron when she heard hoofbeats on the causeway. Not a cart. A single horse, moving fast. She set down the account book and climbed to the tower's second-floor window, the one that looked west toward the approach road. A rider. On a destrier proper warhorse, tall and powerfully built. The man on its back wore traveling clothes, but she could see the gleam of armor beneath, and a sword hung at his hip in the style of knights rather than common soldiers. He rode like someone who expected the world to move aside for him. Lyra felt a familiar irritation rise in her chest. She dealt with Lord Tail's men before, and with merchants who thought their goods gave them license to swagger. This one had the look of both noble arrogance mixed with merchant presumption. She descended the stairs, crossed the bridge to the mainland, and stood waiting as the rider approached. The knight. He was young, perhaps 30, give or take, with the kind of face that had probably charmed many a court lady. Dark hair, sharp features, a smile that suggested he was very pleased with himself and expected others to share that assessment. He reined in his horse with a flourish that sent up a spray of dirt and looked down at Lyra with an expression of mild surprise. "Well," he said in accented but fluent common tongue, "I was expecting the wizard, but you'll do for a start. Tell him Sir Ricard has arrived with his sulfur. And do be quick about it. I've ridden hard these past 2 days and I'm in need of proper hospitality." Lyra stared up at him. "Sir Ricard? You've heard of me, then? Excellent. That saves time." He dismounted with the easy grace of someone who'd been on horseback since childhood. "My reputation does travel, though I wasn't certain how far east the news had spread. Tell me, do they sing about the tournament of the 7 crowns this far from civilization? I took first prize in both the joust and the melee. Quite the accomplishment, if I do say so myself." "I've never heard of it," Lyra said flatly. His smile faltered. "Never heard of the tournament of the 7 crowns? The greatest gathering of martial prowess in 5 kingdoms? Where I personally unseated Sir Marod of the Silver Lance, who'd been undefeated for 3 years. No." "Ah." He recovered quickly. "Well, provincial education, I suppose. No matter. The point is, I'm Sir Ricard du Montaigne, Knight of the Western Marches, victor of 3 tourneys, and bearer of the King's warrant for trade beyond borders. And I've brought your sulfur, though I must say the journey was considerably more difficult than Master Ferron led me to believe. The eastern roads are absolutely dreadful. I nearly lost a wheel in a muddy rut near some god-forsaken village with more pigs than people. He gestured to his horse, where several large sacks were tied to the saddle. 400 weight of refined sulfur, as ordered. Now, where might I stable my horse? And I'll need a room for the night, preferably with a proper bed and hot water for washing. The tower looks adequate, if rustic. I assume you have servants to attend to such matters? Lyra felt her jaw tighten. We don't have servants. I'm the wizard's apprentice, not a scullery maid. And the tower doesn't offer lodging to merchants. Merchants? His expression shifted to something between offense and disbelief. My dear girl, I am a knight of noble blood, not some common peddler. Surely you can see the difference? I see a man who's a month late with a delivery and expects to be treated like visiting royalty. His eyes narrowed. Late because the original merchant Master Ferron hired turned out to be unreliable, and I, being in the area on other business, graciously agreed to transport the materials myself. I've gone considerably out of my way to bring you your precious sulfur, and this is the gratitude I receive. You'll receive payment and directions to the nearest inn. That's standard for all deliveries. Standard for he stopped, took a breath, clearly working to control his temper. Where is the wizard? Surely he'll have better manners than his. He looked her up and down. What are you exactly? Servant? What? Some local girl he's taken charity on? His apprentice. I already told you. Apprentice. He made it sound like a joke. How? Progressive. And where is this master of yours? In the eastern marshes. Taking measurements. He'll return by evening. Measurements. How terribly exciting. So Ricard unfastened the sacks from his saddle. Very well. Since I'm clearly not going to receive proper hospitality, I'll at least collect my payment before I'm unceremoniously dismissed. The agreed price was 12 silver marks, plus an additional 3 for my trouble and the delay. The agreed price was 12 marks total. There's no provision for additional payment due to delay. The delay wasn't my fault. Then take it up with Master Ferron. I pay what was agreed, not what you feel you deserve. They stared at each other. His horse stamped nervously, sensing the tension. Finally, Sir Ricard laughed a sharp, bitter sound. Remarkable. I travel for 3 days through mud and rain to deliver materials to the edge of civilization, and I'm treated like a common fraud trying to overcharge for shoddy goods. Master Ferron assured me this would be a simple transaction with appropriate compensation. It is simple. Deliver the sulfur, receive 12 marks, leave. Nothing could be simpler. You, he said, pointing at her with one gloved finger, are exactly the kind of person who makes me question whether civilization is worth preserving. No respect for rank, no appreciation for service, no understanding of proper social hierarchy. Just cold mercantile calculation and provincial rudeness. Lyra walked past him to examine the sacks of sulfur. She opened one, took a pinch of the yellow powder, rubbed it between her fingers, sniffed it. The quality seemed good, refined, not raw ore. She could work with this. The sulfur is acceptable, she said. Wait here. I'll get your payment. Wait here, he muttered as she walked away. Like a stable boy. Wonderful. The evening return. Lyra had been in the supply room cataloguing the sulfur when she heard voices outside. Not Fenris's voice, someone else. Loud. Speaking in a manner that didn't match the setting at all. She climbed to the window and looked out at the garrison house. So Ricard was there, still mounted on his destrier, gesturing grandly while Otto and Gret stood in their doorway looking utterly baffled. Elian was there too, arms crossed, watching this strange performance with the expression of a man trying to understand a foreign language. And surely you must have a lady of the house? Ricard was saying with elaborate courtesy. "A mistress to oversee hospitality? In any proper household, it is the lady who welcomes distinguished guests and ensures their comfort is attended to." Otto blinked. "Sir, my wife is. She's right here." He gestured to Gret, who was standing beside him holding Thomas, staring at the night like he'd asked her to explain the movement of the stars. "Oh, the fair lady herself." Ricard swept into an elaborate bow from horseback that nearly had him sliding off the saddle. "My lady, I am Sir Ricard du Montaigne, Knight of the Western Marches, and I find myself in need of your gracious hospitality. Might you have chambers prepared for a guest of my station, and perhaps a bath drawn? The roads have been quite dreadful." Gret looked at Otto. Otto looked at Elaine. Elaine shrugged. "Chambers?" Gret said slowly. "Yes, a guest room, preferably with a view, though I understand one must adjust expectations when traveling to the provinces." We have a common room," Gret said, speaking as though to a confused child. "With benches. We all share it. We don't have guest chambers, sir. This isn't an inn." "Not an inn?" Ricard looked genuinely puzzled. "But you have multiple families, structures, clearly some form of organization. Where do you put visitors?" "We don't get visitors, sir," Otto said flatly. "Except the wizard. And he lives over there." He pointed at the tower. "How remarkably rustic." Ricard dismounted with a flourish that sent up a small cloud of dust. "Very well, I shall adapt to local customs. Now, about supper, I don't suppose you have pheasant? Or perhaps venison? I'm quite fond of game, properly prepared with a wine reduction and—" "We have turnip stew," Elaine said, his voice completely deadpan. "Turnip stew." Ricard's smile was starting to look painted on. "How wholesome. And for wine?" "Small beer." "Of course. Small beer. Naturally." He looked around at the settlement, the rough garrison house, the dark willows in the distance, the utilitarian tower across the water. "This is quite possibly the most aggressively provincial place I've ever had the misfortune to visit." Fenris always did have peculiar taste in residences. The families were exchanging glances now, not frightened, just completely bewildered about what this overdressed fool wanted from them and why he seemed to think they ran a noble's estate. Is he all right in the head?" Gret whispered to Otto. "No idea," Otto whispered back. "Just keep smiling and maybe he'll go away." Lyra was already moving, crossing the bridge. She arrived to find Ricard now lecturing Hannah about the proper way to arrange table settings for distinguished guests, while Hannah nodded along with the glazed expression of someone who'd stopped listening 3 minutes ago. "That's enough," Lyra said, her voice cutting through his dissertation on the symbolic placement of bread knives. He turned to look at her, his expression shifting from lecturing mode to recognition. "Ah, the charming apprentice returns. Perhaps you can explain to these good people the basic courtesies owed to visiting nobility. They don't owe you anything. You're a sulfur delivery, not a visiting duke. These are farmers, not servants. I am a night elf. You're a man on a horse asking ridiculous questions about wine cellars in a place that doesn't have walls. Get to the point or leave." His eyes narrowed. "The point, my dear girl, is that I've traveled considerable distance to deliver your sulfur, and I expected at least basic." That's when she heard hoofbeats on the causeway. Different rhythm. Familiar. Fenris returning from the marshes. Ricard heard it too. His whole demeanor changed, the offended noble dropping away to reveal something that looked almost gleeful. "Ah, finally, the master himself." He remounted in one smooth motion. "Time to greet an old friend properly." Lyra followed, her hand near her knife, not trusting this pompous idiot anywhere near Fenris. "You absolute bastard!" So Ricard shouted cheerfully. 3 months of silence, and then you send for sulfur like I'm some common delivery boy? I ought to challenge you to single combat for the insult. Fenris was close now, perhaps 10 paces away. You're the one who volunteered to bring it. Because I was bored. Because the Western court is full of tedious politics and preening nobles, and I thought, why not visit old Fenris? See what he's gotten himself into this time? Maybe he's finally settled down, found himself a wife, started living like a normal person. He gestured at the tower, the garrison house, the dark willows in the distance. But no, of course not. You're still playing at being the mysterious wizard in the remote tower, keeping watch over things that normal people have the good sense to ignore. How very like you. Ricard, Fenris said, his voice carrying a warning. And that apprentice of yours? Ricard continued, warming to his subject. Absolutely zero respect for proper social convention. Do you know she threatened to pay me the bare minimum and send me to an inn? An inn. As though I were some travelling tinker instead of a knight of the realm. You are a travelling tinker at the moment. You brought sulfur. I brought sulfur as a favour to an old friend, not as a commercial transaction. They were close now, perhaps 5 paces apart. And then, without warning, Sir Ricard lunged forward and kicked Fenris hard in the shin. Lyra was through the door before she could think, knife already in her hand, moving with the speed and silence of her circus training. The attack. She saw red, pure, overwhelming rage. This foreign bastard had spent the afternoon insulting her, demanding respect he hadn't earned, complaining about payment for a service he'd agreed to provide. And now he was attacking Fenris. Kicking him like a common brawler, taking advantage of the wizard's age, his relative frailty, his lack of armor. She was across the courtyard in seconds, knife raised, aiming for the gap between Sir Ricard's shoulder and his neck where the armor didn't quite cover. A hand caught her wrist. Fenris's hand, iron strong despite his apparent age. Lyra, stop. She struggled against his grip, still focused on the knight who was now staring at her with wide eyes. He attacked you. He greeted me, Fenris said, his voice very calm. Badly, I'll grant you, but it's how we say hello. He kicked you. And I'll kick him back in a moment. It's a game we've played for years, which you would know if you'd bothered to wait 2 seconds before trying to murder him. The words sank in slowly. Lyra looked at Fenris. He didn't look hurt, didn't look angry, just tired, and perhaps faintly amused. She looked at Sir Ricard, who had his hand on his sword hilt but hadn't drawn it. His expression had shifted from shock to something that might have been approval. She's fast, he said to Fenris. Circus training, you said? Among other things. And utterly willing to kill for you without hesitation. How heartwarming, though perhaps you might have warned her that old friends greet each other like idiots. Fenris let go of Lyra's wrist. She stepped back, the knife still in her hand, her heart pounding. You knew him, she said. The words came out flat, accusing. I know him, Fenris corrected. So Ricard du Montaigne, insufferable noble. Occasional companion on dangerous work. Current annoyance. He looked at Ricard. Did you really have to kick me? We're getting too old for this nonsense. You kicked me first. In Auvergne. At that reception where you convinced me there was a demon in the wine cellar. There was a demon in the wine cellar. It was a badger. A very angry badger that you'd accidentally trapped. Ricard grinned. Though the secret mission was worse. Remember the secret? When we had to, he made an elaborate gesture. Oh wait, I can't talk about the secret. It's secret. Fenris rolled his eyes. Stop calling it that. You're the only one who thinks it's mysterious. I deserved it now. You asked me to deliver sulfur and didn't even tell me you had a feral apprentice who'd try to gut me like a fish. They were bickering like old friends, like brothers, like people who'd known each other long enough to have a catalogue of old grievances and inside jokes. Lyra felt something cold and humiliating wash over her. She'd attacked a guest, had tried to stab someone Fenris knew, had made a complete fool of herself because she hadn't understood what she was seeing. She sheathed her knife with shaking hands and turned toward the tower. Lyra, Fenris started. "I'll be inside," she said, not looking back. "I'm sure you and your friend have much to discuss." The aftermath. She made it to her room before the shaking got worse, sat on the edge of her narrow bed and pressed her hands against her knees to stop the trembling. She'd almost killed him. If Fenris hadn't caught her wrist, if she'd been half a second faster, so Ricard would be bleeding out in the courtyard and she'd have blood on her hands that couldn't be washed away. All because she hadn't known, hadn't understood, had seen violence and assumed the worst. A knock at her door, soft, careful. "Go away," she said. "No." Fenris's voice. "We need to talk." "I don't want to talk." "I know, but we're going to anyway." The door opened. He came in without waiting for permission, carrying a lamp and a cup of something that smelled like strong spirits. He sat in the chair by her window, set the lamp on the small table, and held out the cup. "Drink this. You're shaking." She took it because she didn't know what else to do. The liquid burned going down but spread warmth through her chest. "I should have warned you," Fenris said after a moment. "About Ricard. About our history. I didn't think he'd actually come himself. I thought he'd just arrange the delivery and maybe send a note." "You kicked each other as greeting," Lyra said, her voice hollow. "It's stupid. I know it's stupid. We started doing it after a particularly dangerous mission where we both nearly died and decided to celebrate by being idiots. It became a tradition, a reminder that we're both still alive and still capable of being juvenile despite our better judgment." He could have told me when he arrived. He probably assumed you knew who he was. Ricard's famous in the Western Kingdoms. Tournament champion, hero of several minor wars, favorite of 3 different courts. He's used to being recognized and treated like visiting royalty. Fenris smiled faintly. You treating him like a common merchant probably shattered his entire worldview. "Good," Lyra muttered. "Lyra." She looked at him finally. His expression was serious but not angry. "What you did trying to defend me, that was loyal, brave, exactly what I'd want in a dangerous situation." He paused. "But it was also premature. You saw violence and responded with violence without taking a moment to assess whether it was actually a threat." "It looked like a threat." "It did. But you know me. You know I can defend myself if I need to. You should have waited 2 seconds to see if I was actually in danger before trying to gut one of my oldest friends." The shame burned hotter. "I know." "Do you?" "Because what I saw wasn't calculation or assessment. What I saw was panic and rage and immediate violence, which is useful in some situations but catastrophic in others." He leaned forward. "What if it had been a different kind of greeting? What if someone from another culture had approached me with what looked like a weapon but was actually a gift? Would you have killed them before realizing your mistake?" Lyra couldn't answer. "I need you to think before you act," Fenris said quietly. "I need you to assess, to observe, to understand context before you draw steel. Because the world is strange and getting stranger, and what looks like danger isn't always danger. And what looks like safety isn't always safe. You can't survive here on reflexes alone. You need judgment." "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know you are. And I'm not saying your instinct was wrong. Protecting someone you care about is admirable. But instinct without thought can be as dangerous as thought without instinct. He stood. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you're going to apologize to Ricard, and he's going to apologize to you, and we're all going to pretend this was a valuable learning experience instead of a near catastrophe. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, he was impressed. Said you moved like a professional killer and showed absolutely no hesitation. High praise from someone who's fought in actual wars. A faint smile. Just try not to kill any more of my friends without checking with me first. Then he was gone. The apology. She found Sir Ricard in the garrison house common room the next morning, eating breakfast with the families. He'd charmed them all already. Apparently Otto was laughing at some story. Tilly was sitting on his knee listening with wide eyes. Even Hannah looked less severe than usual. He saw Lyra in the doorway and his expression shifted to something cautious. Ah, the deadly apprentice. Come to finish what you started? Lyra walked over, very aware of everyone watching. She stood before him and said, voice steady, I apologize for attacking you. I misunderstood the situation and responded inappropriately. The words felt like chewing glass, but they were true. Ricard studied her for a moment, then smiled. Apology accepted, and I apologize for being an insufferable ass when I arrived. I'm used to certain social conventions that clearly don't apply here. He set Tilly down gently and stood, extending his hand. Shall we start over? I'm Sir Ricard du Montaigne, insufferable noble, former drinking companion of your master and occasional deliverer of sulfur. Lyra took his hand. His grip was firm but not crushing. Lyra, apprentice, circus performer, occasional attempted murder of the wizard's friends. He laughed a genuine sound this time. Well, at least you're honest about it. Fenris is lucky to have someone so loyal, even if that loyalty comes with a side of casual violence. He deserves it, Lyra said. The loyalty, I mean. Not the violence. Oh, I don't know. I think he secretly enjoys having someone willing to stab people on his behalf. Makes him feel important. Ricard sat back down, gestured for her to join them, though perhaps in future you might verify that the person you're about to stab is actually an enemy and not just an old friend with terrible manners. I'll try, Lyra said, sitting. Though if you kick him again, I make no promises. Fair enough. I'll try to restrain myself. He took a bite of bread, studied her for a moment. Though I am curious, Fenris mentioned you were with a traveling circus before this. Performing, knife throwing, that sort of thing. Seems like quite the life. How does one go from that to this? Taking care of an aging wizard in a tower at the edge of nowhere? He gestured vaguely at the settlement. I mean, circus work is honest, respectable, good coin, travel, entertainment. And now you're, what, exactly? Housekeeper? Nurse? It seems rather a step down, if you don't mind my saying. The question landed like a slap. He was implying with a smile that she'd been demoted. That caring for Fenris, learning his work, was somehow beneath the dignity of circus performance. Lyra met his eyes. The circus was attacked by bandits. Everyone scattered or died. I survived. The wizard found me in the mountains, starving and desperate, and offered me a choice, learn his work or find my own way. I chose to learn. Ricard's smile faltered. I apologize. That was poorly phrased. I didn't mean to imply. You did mean to imply it, Lyra said quietly. You think this work is beneath circus performance, that I'm wasting my skills playing nursemaid to an old man. But the truth is simpler. I was given a choice between dying alone in the cold or learning something that actually matters. The circus was survival. This is more than survival. This is purpose. A moment of uncomfortable silence. Then Ricard nodded slowly. Fair point. And well delivered, I stand corrected. He raised his cup. To finding purpose in unexpected places. Lyra raised her cup as well. To surviving long enough to understand what we're really doing. I'll drink to that. And somehow, after that exchange, over bread and weak beer, with the garrison families listening and contributing their own stories, the tension eased. Ricard told tales of ridiculous tournament mishaps and court politics. Lyra found herself almost liking him once he dropped most of the noble posturing and acted like an actual person. Almost. The departure. Ricard left the next day, his horse loaded with payment and a letter from Fenris to deliver to someone in the Western Court. He paused before mounting, looked at Lyra. You know, most people who threaten to kill me don't become friends afterwards. But I think I might actually like you once you learn to ask questions before stabbing. I'll work on it, Lyra said. Good, because Fenris needs people around him who care whether he lives or dies. The work he does. Ricard's expression turned serious. It's important, more important than most people realize. So keep him safe. Keep yourself safe. And if you ever need help that an insufferable noble can provide, send word. I'm told I'm occasionally useful in a crisis. He mounted, tipped his hat to her in a gesture that was only half mocking, and rode off toward the west. Lyra watched him go, then turned to find Fenris standing behind her. He likes you, Fenris said. He thinks I'm a dangerous lunatic. Same thing to Ricard. Fenris smiled. But he's right about one thing. You do need to learn to assess before you attack. The world's strange enough without us adding unnecessary violence to it. I'll try, Lyra said, though I still think kicking as greeting is stupid. It is, Fenris agreed, but it's our stupid, and some traditions, however dumb, are worth keeping. They remind us we're still human despite everything else. They stood in silence for a moment, watching the road where Ricard had disappeared. He called the work important, Lyra said finally. Does he know what you do? Really know? He knows enough. Not everything, but enough to understand that it matters. Fenris turned back toward the tower. Come on. We have sulfur to catalogue and measurements to take. And you have a lesson on contextual threat assessment that I've been meaning to give you. Lyra followed him across the bridge, and life at the tower continued.